we are two people who both talk about the future, talk about our educational prospects and our job options in terms of how they might or might not be positively linked to veganism. We're not obsessed with the idea that our jobs have to be vegan, but it would be great if there's some kind of positive connection between how we earn money, how we survive, and the future of the vegan movement. And we talk about a lot of options. So, I mean, within the last year, I've mentioned this in other videos before, this isn't news, but she and I have both thought about going back to school and getting a degree linked to nutritional science. So that's a hard biochemistry-based degree. It takes like 4.5 years minimum and leads to pretty low-level employment as a nutritionist. You know, that's a group that both of us had researched. I think we researched it independently before we ever got together. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about doing it together, partly because if you have to take those courses, like Intro to Chemistry 101, it would be a lot less depressing if you're in the classroom with somebody you're in love with and you get to go home and study together. You know, it really could take the edge off that stuff. Yeah. So we got a question from a viewer here. As two people who, again, really in an open-minded way, we've just looked at a lot of different career options, educational options since we got together, and we're looking for things that are positively connected to veganism. So we've got an email from a viewer in Argentina, and this viewer basically, sorry, I'll read it directly. Quote, when I first got into veganism, I was thinking about studying something related to biology, zoology, botany, ecology, something along those lines. But these last few months, I started thinking about the real meaning and importance of veganism and whether or not I would be better off spending my time studying political science. So she's questioning broadly, is it better to go down the path of the hard sciences, whether ecology, chemistry, biology, or otherwise, or to be looking at the social sciences, politics, because veganism is ultimately a political struggle. The future of the movement is going to relate to politics. So, I mean, right off the bat, babe, I mean, you know, it's hard for you looking at the movement, looking at what's going on, what's possible, what's impossible. I think for you, I mean, not to put words in your mouth, but I think whenever you sit down and talk about a possible master's degree or a possible further university degree with your family, the question is, how is this degree going to pay for itself? How are we actually going to earn back money? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. How is this going to lead to a good career? Something that will allow me to have a family, have enough to retire on.
or I mean, to put it in other words, what job does this qualify you for?
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, you know, full disclosure, so I already have 1 degree in political science, currently getting a 2nd degree in Asian studies. So my perspective is totally different. But my girlfriend here, I mean, I think you're just someone who would be tempted by politics because you care about politics of ecology, politics of veganism, and so on especially. But I think it's that general sense of wanting to be empowered, wanting to have expertise that'll help you make a positive difference in the world, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why we were thinking about Masters of Public Administration. It sort of has to do with politics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, look, broadly speaking, so in response to this viewer from Argentina, I can't speak on how the universities are in Argentina, of course, but I think that the whole field of political science, for one thing, it's struggling to be a science. It's struggling to justify itself as something other than just opinion. You could have an academic discipline called political opinion, where you come in and read other people's political opinions and give your own. And it's not called political opinion. It's called political science. And I think there's the different attempts to square the circle, different attempts to solve that impossible to solve problem, because it may be there really is no solution to that. It may be that ultimately this is just a school of opinion. But one way is by trying to define the discipline in terms of bureaucracy, which is what Masters of Public Administration is. We're saying, okay, this isn't politics anymore. Public administration, public sector administration means bureaucracy, so the actual mechanisms of the state and ultimately how to fill out Form T28, Form Z55, how running organizations works, how government agencies works, how the mechanics of the state get things done. So I think that, now for you, in terms of actually convincing your parents that this is worth $10,000 or $50,000, in the United States, it's very, very expensive. That's crucial because you're able to point to the curriculum and say, this is actually giving me a skill, it's giving me training, it's giving me a qualification to do a job that otherwise I would not be able to do. And that is not true of Masters of Public Policy. It qualifies you to do almost nothing. And it's not true of political science as a discipline, which is scary. It's scary to think you're going to spend years of your life at $10,000. And at the end of the process, you are qualified for no jobs other than what you were qualified for before you enrolled in the diploma. So feel free to interrupt me at any time. But obviously, in answering this question, this is something I have a lot to say about, and you won't have as much to pile on with. But it does relate to your past, present, future in a weird way. I do think, like, in the United States, many of the universities in political science tried to legitimize themselves as a science, as a discipline, and to make the very high rate, the very high fees, the very high tuition fees seem worth money through two methods, which we really don't do in Canada. It's a difference even between the United States and Canada, big difference between the United States and Europe. Two methods. One, they tried to get celebrity professors. So, like, names you barely remember from the Clinton administration. Bill Clinton's Secretary of State, Bill Clinton's special ambassador for this and that. Old politicians, they bring them in, they make professors out of them, and they say, oh, you'll get to meet this person and ask them what it felt like to press the button to drop that bomb on Cambodia, or drop the, start the other Iraq war. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, it sounds like a joke, but it's not. It's big business. In the States, by having celebrity professors, by recruiting people from government, they're often reassuring students that they'll be able to get a job, because there's the hope that this celebrity professor will get you an internship or get you, open a door to some kind of job in Washington, D.C. or somewhere else in the U.S. government, that you'll be making connections that justify spending a huge amount of money on tuition. And the second trick in the United States that I think is a bit more of a pervasive, corrosive effect, I've never mentioned this to you before, but it's horrible. Like, if you said to me you really wanted to do political science, not public administration, I would warn you. In the States especially, they put a lot of emphasis on statistics. I talked about this right after Trump got elected, actually, in one video. It was a Patreon-only video. But, they put so much emphasis on crunching numbers. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is clinging to this idea that it's political science.
Right.
It's a science, not just... And those poll numbers, what we've seen in the election of Trump especially, the fact that it was a surprise, those numbers have actually become less and less meaningful. They're often polling data based on telephone interviews with people. They phoned up 5,000 people in Florida and asked them who they were going to vote for, and asked them a few other questions, how happy or unhappy they are with the governments and things like that. And then they crunch those numbers and produce seemingly impressive-looking charts and some very complex equations on a chalkboard that you have to write exams about, that really burdens the student. And again, most of the students are coming in, they're people who sincerely care about politics one way or another, whether they're left-wing or right-wing, whether they're vegan or they're into gun rights, whatever their issue is. And that's a very boring, burdensome process of learning to crunch numbers that probably dissuades a lot of people from studying political science. I would say in Europe, there is emphasis on polling, but it doesn't quite take on that form that you have in the States. And then outside of that, real quick to say, if you're looking for hard political science, something that's not just come in and talk about your emotions, not just come in and talk about your feelings and we'll give you a master's degree, you're really going to be surprised a lot of times. The things that look hard are actually the softest. So you'll have a program in something like international human rights. And you think, oh, great. So this is going to be real politics because we're talking about refugee camps. We're talking about massacres and crimes against humanity. And then you get there, and it's kind of like a school for victimology. And people are just sitting down and talking about their feelings and social justice rhetoric. And at the end of the process, you haven't gained any skills, any itemizable specific skills to put in your resume for any job you can do. And there have been a lot of reflections about that from professors themselves. I find professors are quite willing to talk about the shortcomings of the academic approach to the teaching and study of politics. But look, I've got one test subject here. If I was going to put this out as a general question, should anybody in 2017 get a diploma in political science? My own girlfriend, my answer is no. So I know this bright young woman who I happen to be in love with. She's interested in veganism and a lot of the political issues I'm interested in. But I can't say to her, yes, commit, buckle down, get a degree in political science. I can't say that. And, Even just as a thought experiment, if I think of who should get a degree in political science, the answer is almost nobody.
Sorry.
Tech support, Morty, get in here, fix the camera. What is this? Okay, well, fine. Now we're off center. That's cool. That's a suitable ending to the video. I don't. You got anything else particular to add on, babe? Because I can't recommend that she goes into that field. And with the exception,
it doesn't really have to do with what I've studied. I've studied English, and it's like,
yeah.
I mean, nothing that I'm going into really will be building on that anyway. Nothing that I've looked into, really. I mean, English did help me with communication skills and just generally writing and So it is a generally useful degree, and I got a bachelor's, so that's great.
Yeah, I know it's funny you say that because when you think about it, in a perfect world, those two should be linked. Because I mean,
one of my friends did get one of my roommates did get an English and political science double major. But her job right now has nothing to do with either of those degrees.
Work at Starbucks.
Working in marketing.
Marketing, okay, right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's better or worse than working at Starbucks. But better working at Starbucks. Yeah, but when you think about it, because in terms of the other political science kids I knew, look, I could talk a good game before I went into that. You know, a degree in political science is not a degree in oratory. It's not a degree in public speaking. It's not a degree even in writing, how to write essays well, or how to write columns with politics well. It's not a degree in communications, and it's not a degree in English. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things that's very sad about political science is that most people, even if they come out of it with a PhD, even at the PhD level, they are actually not good at talking about politics or writing about politics. Like really, 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 really. And I mean, maybe that's the most kind of fundamental swindle of all, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe for some people, if what you want to do is politics, it's pathetic as this sounds, you might even be better off getting a degree in literature or creative writing or something. Maybe, you know what I mean?
Maybe, yeah.
If you have a good program in that, yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's it, kids. Answer to the question: should anyone get a degree in political science? As a gross generalization globally, and I've got experience in many, many universities in Asia, funny places like Taiwan and Hong Kong, in Canada, a lot in Europe too. I don't know anywhere where I could positively say, especially if you're interested in ecology, you're interested in veganism, but in any field. Right now, I really do think the whole academic discipline is bankrupt. I think it's making hollow promises to students that the professors can't deliver on. And look, guys, keeping it all the way real, a lot of professors talk to me as an equal and a friend. Not all. A few hate my guts. It's understandable. But, you know, quite a few professors really do enjoy talking to me because I'm older than the other students and more mature and so on. I had one professor sit down with me and say that he keeps track of every single student who finishes study with him, what they do after they leave. And he told me that 0 found a real job. So, you know, some were employed, like you say, in Starbucks or marketing. So they'd found something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But and some had gotten a little part-time position or something. He said 0 of his students. And he's I'm not going to name him, but he's a real world expert in his field. He is one of the best in his field. And, you know, I've had other professors, you know, tell me the same thing, where at this point they're teaching politics, but they teach it the same way you teach poetry, where you just say to your students, look, if you're not doing it for the love of the genre, if you're not doing it for the love of the game, you know, get out now, because this leads to absolutely you get no employable skills, you get nothing.
So why did you go into political science when you were getting
That's a great question. I'm going to press stop, and maybe we'll record that as a second video, as a sequel. Why did I end up in political science at all? Nobody has asked me that before. So great, babe.